The following is produced by 5 Star Productions USA, which is solely responsible for its editorial content and is sponsored in part by a grant from Paul Mitchell Salon Hair Care.
Approximately 100 urban areas in the United States fail to meet federal ozone or carbon monoxide standards. Ozone protects the Earth from ultraviolet rays at high altitudes, but at lower altitudes is one of the major contributors to smog. Ground-level ozone pollution is predicted to increase by as much as 50% in the next 30 years. I'm Ed Begley Jr. Join me as we address these and other environmental concerns on Today's Environment.
Today, City Council
reducing air pollutants by 80%. Educational programs.
Even as some local and regional air pollution problems are brought under control, problems from the past are appearing on a global scale. Even today, more than 150 million people in the U.S. breathe air deemed unfit by the EPA. Next, we'll investigate innovative air purification technology.
Many companies around the world use solvents in the operation of their businesses. A solvent is a chemical, usually a liquid, used to remove unwanted substances, like oil from engine parts, or as a way to transport coatings, such as paint. Solvents dissolve pigments and keep them in liquid form until they're used. When the paint is applied, the solvents evaporate, leaving a nice dry coating. Solvents are also used in dry cleaning, producing styrofoam for food and beverage containers, and degreasing aerospace parts. Many of us have these solvents in our homes, but major corporations use literally tons of them every year. When solvents evaporate, they are volatile organic compounds, otherwise known as VOCs. VOCs are chemicals that, if released into the air, can cause eye irritation and respiratory problems, and even prove to be toxic for some plants. The discarded solvents are taken to landfills and hazardous waste sites, or are processed for reuse. The disposal of these products is closely monitored by the Environmental Protection Agency. Companies using more than 50,000 pounds of solvents per year must submit forms stating exactly how they were used or discharged. The EPA also restricts the amount of solvent vapors companies can release into the air. Nucon International has developed an energy-efficient pollution control device that takes solvent vapors and converts them back to a recycled liquid, ready to be used again and again. Their Brayton Cycle solvent recovery system treats the exhaust containing chemical solvents and cools it until they condense and form a liquid. There are other solvent recovery systems now in use. What makes this method different is its capability to conserve energy as well as trap harmful VOCs and reduce water pollution. Systems such as this one are not inexpensive. They cost about $500,000, sometimes more. Therefore, small companies like dry cleaners and auto repair shops may not be able to afford them. The EPA, though, is expected to soon begin regulating the use of solvents in small businesses. Small companies could face heavy fines and eventually be forced out of business by these new regulations. In Southern California, Nucon is working with the South Coast Air Quality Management District, the United States Department of Energy, and Southern California Edison to help small business owners find a way to recycle their solvents for reuse. Plans for a portable service are underway and expected to be completed this year. With this service, small business owners will install a charcoal filter which traps VOCs and prevents them from being released into the atmosphere. A truck equipped with a recovery system would travel from business to business providing a service. By restoring the charcoal filter to its working condition and collecting the solvents, which are returned to the company's storage tank for reuse. The environmental benefits are threefold. Since the product is reused, business owners don't have to purchase new solvents, and consequently, production of new solvents decreases, saving the energy and resources needed to make them. The process also recycles hazardous waste, keeping it out of our landfills, and traps pollutants, keeping them out of our atmosphere.
One estimate suggests that 1 in 15 U.S. households uses bottled water for drinking and cooking. In California, the rate is 1 in 3. But just because bottled water comes in a container labeled pure or fresh does not mean it is any safer to drink than regular tap water. We took a look at how ultraviolet rays treat water and wastewater to make it safer.
Water is our most precious resource. Without it, we can't survive. We rely on it every day for drinking, cooking, and bathing. We use it for recreation, transportation, and in countless other applications. We depend on our water to be clean and pure, free of contaminants that might harm us. But advancing technology has placed our water at risk. Herbicides and pesticides used to grow better crops can wash into streams and rivers. Harmful substances like PCBs and electric transformers can contaminate water supplies if not properly handled. Large industrial operations generate wastewater as part of their manufacturing process. And makers of computers and sophisticated electronics use chemical solvents to clean sensitive components. If those solvents spill or aren't disposed of properly, they can pollute our water supplies. In fact, improper and illegal disposal of hazardous substances is a problem that can come to haunt us years after the fact. Gasoline and diesel fuel stored in underground tanks threaten our water too. If leaks occur, we can end up with water that's foul-smelling, bad-tasting, and harmful to all of us. Industry has developed a number of approaches to clean wastewater dirtied by manufacturing and groundwater affected by leaks or improper storage. Unfortunately, many of these techniques have drawbacks of their own. Water can be cleansed by blowing air through it, but that can create air pollution. Or water can be passed through carbon filters, but then the contaminated carbon itself becomes a hazardous waste that must still be disposed of safely. There's a relatively new approach to water treatment that eliminates these potentially harmful side effects. Peroxidation Systems Incorporated's PeroxPure system effectively destroys contaminants in water, leaving no hazardous byproducts. The technology actually breaks down certain contaminants by using hydrogen peroxide, that common chemical we often use to clean cuts and scrapes, and ultraviolet light. That's the portion of the light spectrum that tans our skin and causes our car interiors to fade from the beating sun. The treatment equipment can cleanse water of a large number of dissolved organic contaminants, substances that use carbon, oxygen, hydrogen, and chlorine as their basic building blocks. After contaminated water is tested to determine if the process can be applied, a system is designed to meet the specific treatment needs. As water flows into the equipment's treatment chamber, it's mixed with hydrogen peroxide and then bathed with ultraviolet light produced by powerful bulbs of up to 30,000 watts each. As a result, the contaminants break down chemically into two harmless byproducts, carbon dioxide and water. Then the water is returned to the manufacturing process or put back into the environment. There's no air pollution and no hazardous substances to haul away. Peroxidation Systems treatment equipment can be used in residential areas or industrial settings where contaminated water is a source of concern. This innovative cleansing process is just one more example of how science is working to address the problems that technology poses to our environment. The clean water that this system creates is something we can all appreciate.
Rainforests provide a home to as many as 5 million species of plants, animals, and insects. That's 40 to 50% of all types of living things. Today's Environment took a look at another environmental issue facing our society.
Our society has always had to face many changes. The modern-day workforce has rapidly expanded as two-income families become more commonplace. Our fast and furious pace of the last 20 years has left us with mounting environmental problems that can no longer be overlooked. What's forgotten is how the small local businesses in our communities play a part and can have a long-term effect. Often viewed as only a large corporation, most people don't realize that 80% of the 8,800 neighborhood McDonald's restaurants across this country are owned and operated by someone who lives in that community. These merchants have a vested interest in the local economy, their school systems, and certainly the environment. During McDonald's earliest beginnings, legendary founder Ray Kroc had his crews clean up all litter within a block of each restaurant. Now, with access to the resources of today's McDonald's Corporation at their disposal, the local owner-operators have an array of bigger and better programs going on right in their own backyard. Even before each new facility opens, the benefits of the McRecycle USA program, a commitment to spend $100 million annually on recycled material, are being implemented right from the start. These local restaurants are built with old tires, used light bulbs, and recycled computer housings, to name a few sources. Old discarded tires become part of the rubber playing surfaces for the children. Recycled steel, aluminum, and plastics are used for seats and tabletops. Even used light bulbs wind up taking their place, not in the ceiling, but down in the floors as new tiles. These new ways to use old materials are but one of the keys to the restaurant's local community environmental involvement. The future of all environmental programs lies not just with their implementation, but with their continued practice. McDonald's is doing just that in its local communities. For example, some local owner-operators team up with a phone company to provide a drop-off point for old discarded telephone directories, which in turn are hauled away and recycled, sometimes into products used by McDonald's. They focus on local needs and interests. For instance, a group of restaurants in western Washington state joined with the state PTA to sponsor It's Our Washington, an organized environmental program that promotes awareness and ends up with the entertaining recycling games competition for kids up to 6th grade. Students compete in events such as the Newspaper Bundling Dash, the Recycling Obstacle Course, Team Can Crushing, and the Trash Separation Relay. All these local owners and operators prove that together a dedicated effort can reach out and affect everyone. And the best part is that the local business's main focus is on the ones who benefit the most, those who need to be educated early, our kids. And maybe the best lesson learned is that through education, kids can make the biggest difference. Over the past 100 years, advancing technology and industrial expansion, while benefiting mankind, have often had negative effects on the environment. Throughout the country, federal and state programs are currently directed toward cleaning up contaminated industrial areas. Often, industry takes the lead in identifying and cleaning these sites. However, the environmental problems are typically a result of multiple causes, which make identification and control of pollutants a complex job. The complicated nature of cleaning up a hazardous area is compounded by a maze of local and federal laws, guidelines, and restrictions. The investigation, study, planning, and cleanup of a contaminated location requires experts in a wide variety of specialty fields. PTI Environmental Services, headquartered in Bellevue, Washington, has assembled more than 150 scientists, engineers, and support staff dedicated to finding real-world solutions to environmental problems. The majority of these professionals hold masters or PhDs in their respective fields. PTI chemists monitor the collection of data and the methods used to evaluate it. These data often form the basis for subsequent evaluations and the development of cleanup alternatives. To ensure accuracy, the data are subject to rigorous quality control procedures because study results may be used in litigation. Geochemists, hydrogeologists, and hydrologists study the way chemicals behave and move through soil, surface water, and groundwater. Toxicologists assess health risks to people who might be exposed to chemicals in the environment. For example, the risk of exposing children to chemicals and soil particles can be calculated and safe cleanup levels determined. Sometimes chemicals can threaten plant or animal communities without posing a risk to humans. Specialists in the relatively new field of ecotoxicology study the interactions of chemicals with entire ecological systems. Based on the understanding derived from these studies, environmental and civil engineers working with the scientists provide detailed evaluations and designs for treatment or cleanup alternatives. Onondaga Lake in Syracuse, New York, currently under study, provides a good example of how PTI approaches environmental problems. The industrialization of the Syracuse area over the past century has left the lake with elevated levels of mercury and other chemicals. Environmental investigations of the lake generate tremendous quantities of data which must be analyzed and managed. Several computer systems for storing and studying this information have been designed. The Geographic Information System, or GIS, can produce maps illustrating and summarizing the results of environmental studies, like this one at Onondaga Lake. The GIS is linked to databases containing all of the investigative information. These data can then be displayed on maps to illustrate chemical concentrations, their movement and reactions to different cleanup plans. The computer can even project the ability of nature to achieve natural recovery on its own. A work plan defining study requirements for a project with the scope of Onondaga Lake called for a review of over 50,000 pages of documents. It was written only after thousands of hours of analysis and countless discussions with regulatory agencies and the client that commissioned the study. This study is currently underway, and the results will be used to design appropriate solutions that will meet regulatory requirements and reduce human and ecological risks. The right environmental management plan can help protect society and meet government regulations, while we continue to benefit from industry's technological advances.
Many diseases can be caused by untreated sewage dumped into lakes, rivers, and streams. In North America, we have spent millions of dollars on sewage treatment plants to eliminate this public health problem. Today's Environment discovered how treatment and improvement of wastewater is safer.
One of the main contributors to water pollution is industrial waste disposal. Every year, 250 million tons of it are illegally dumped in landfills, rivers, and oceans. This includes contaminated fluids, commonly referred to as hazardous waste. A new process called cold vaporization is now being used by photo labs, metal plating companies, newspaper printers, and the food industry as a means of recycling and disposal. The system takes contaminated liquids and transforms them into pure, recyclable distilled water. Here at the Portland newspapers in Maine, workers use the system developed by Calfran International of Springfield, Massachusetts. First, they clean the presses with water to rinse off built-up ink. The dirty water is stored, then when enough is accumulated, it is pumped into the cold vaporizer. The machine distills the water using an energy-efficient heat pump to create cold steam. Pure water vapor rises to the top and is condensed into clean water by a cold refrigeration process. All the contaminants are concentrated at the bottom of the unit, where they're made into either a small pile of powder or a concentrated liquid, whatever is best suited for the company's needs. In this case, the newspaper publisher wanted a concentrated liquid. Since the initial liquid contained only water and newspaper ink, the ink is the only thing remaining in the recovery chamber, and it is used again. Being able to recycle it is a bigger environmental contribution than you might think. Some inks contain high levels of heavy metals, such as copper in blue and chromium in yellow. Heavy metal contaminants are harmful when people are exposed to them in sufficient concentrations, so it's important they're disposed of properly, or better yet, not disposed of at all, but recycled. AMP Incorporated uses the same system to recover their plating chemicals used to make electrical connectors. Each step of manufacturing requires rinsing, so the solutions don't get mixed together. Each rinse goes through the cold vaporization process to recycle the chemicals and create more fresh water for rinsing. In cold vaporization, the purified water is removed. It can be used for any purpose, whether it be cleaning more presses, cleaning more electronic components, or even as drinking water. With this system, no waste is generated and no fumes or emissions are dispersed into the atmosphere. This is referred to as zero discharge. In another application, drinking water was made from 100 gallons of seawater. After going through the system, 95 gallons of pure drinkable water emerge, leaving behind 5 gallons of salty water. That water is returned to the sea at the same temperature it was when taken out, so not to disturb the ocean's natural replenishing cycle. Cold vaporization conserves water, recycles liquid chemicals, and provides pure drinking water. Calfran has also devised a way to clean the air in factories and other industries which expose workers to emissions or fumes. The air is actually washed with water through a highly efficient machine called a wet scrubber. The dirty air is drawn in by a fan. It's run through water that cleans it until it is pure. The dirty water is then put through the cold vaporization equipment, where it too is purified. While large chemical-using companies are required to report their disposal practices, smaller businesses like dry cleaners and photo labs are not. However, an increased concern by communities and regulators could change that very soon. Recycling systems like these give us hope for tomorrow.
Oil spills pollute oceans and shorelines in a devastating fashion. It is hard to believe that more than 10,000 oil spills occur each year throughout the world. Here's a look at someone that is making sure that some materials never have the chance to pollute.
Taking pictures is one of the best ways we have to preserve our memories. Through photos, we're able to save precious once-in-a-lifetime moments, our children, or a family wedding. What, might you ask, does photography have to do with the environment? Developing photographs requires different types of equipment, simple developing chemistries, paper, and plastics, such as film canisters, caps, cartridges, and spools. When your family is on vacation, it's great fun to take snapshots. Millions of people are taking pictures every day. With so many photographs being taken, it's important to responsibly manage waste materials. Thanks to environmentally responsible companies like Konica, photographic materials are being recycled and preserved. For example, their single-use camera, the Film In, is sold with a roll of color film already loaded. When the camera is brought into a photo finishing lab, the film is removed and processed. The camera is placed in a collection bin, and when a minimum of 100 are collected, they're returned for recycling. As an incentive to the dealers and photo finishers, they pay 5 cents for each camera returned and also pay for the shipping. Before recycling, the built-in flash and shutter mechanism are removed. The flash units are then sold to a company that uses them for special displays. Similarly, the camera cases are sold to recyclers who process the plastic for use in other useful products. The plastics used for film canisters, caps, discs, and spools are also recycled using a similar process. In another program initiated by the company, the cardboard cores from photographic paper rolls are collected and recycled. Over the last 2 years, Konica has been able to reduce solid waste at its photo processing labs by 44%. In 1984, another conservation effort began when they introduced a revolutionary no-wash color photo finishing system. Now used worldwide, this system makes it possible to process color photos without using a large amount of water. They were also the first in the industry to introduce a color-negative stabilizer free of formaldehyde. In response to a growing concern about the depletion of the ozone layer, the company is working to completely eliminate the use of CFCs in its manufacturing operations by 1993. This will be years ahead of an international agreement which simply calls for a 50% reduction in CFCs. Conservation of our resources, recycling of raw materials, and maintaining a healthy environment are important steps in the design and manufacturing process of their products. The stakes are just too high. That's why everyone must do their share to protect and preserve our environment for future generations.
Pre-cycling occurs when we make environmentally sound choices as we shop. Don't buy products with extra packaging. Buy unbagged or bulk items. Avoid buying products that only satisfy short-term needs such as disposable razors and pens. I'm Ed Begley Jr. Join us next week as we explore more environmental solutions on Today's Environment.
If you know of any interesting environmental success stories, call us at 407-997-9800. This has been a presentation of 5-Star Productions USA. The preceding program was sponsored in part by a grant from Paul Mitchell Salon Hair Care.